Susan Lyall, costume designer for the trial of the Chicago Seven. Thank you for joining me. The film is about the activists who were accused of inciting violence at the 1968 Democratic Convention. And since the film is based on true events and deals with so many real figures, what kind of research did you do into Abby Hoffman and Tom Hayden and a number of the others who are featured?
Well, when you do any film that involves real people, the research is an incredibly important element of it, and it gives you a really great starting point. And in some ways, uh, it's weirdly, I don't want to say easier because I don't want to make it sound like it's easy, but what it is to a costume designer is you have your starting point already, and you choose to follow either the exact path of the research, or you take all the research in, you make yourself incredibly informed, and then you can toss it out, or you can, use it exactly, or you can use it in a way that has the feeling of the character.
And were there characters in the film that didn't have as much sort of primary source information, where like you sort of had more freedom to invent or extrapolate?
Yes, there were a couple of characters that were invented characters. The character of Daphne, for example, who was the honeypot for poor Jerry Rubin. Uh, she was a made up character, um, and but certainly the seven and all the lawyers, they were all real. And even you could even look up some of the jury members. You could find a little bit of research on. So you really had a lot to go on, and you really took your inventiveness into dressing the extras.
Yeah, and something that's interesting that the costumes do in this film is they sort of express a kind of sense of politics of the characters involved. So you've got Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin have this very kind of loose hippie kind of style, and then Tom Hayden is a little bit more kind of buttoned up. And then we're introduced to them at the beginning of the film, and then we cut right into those prosecutors at the Justice Department, black suits, very tailored, very fitted. What was it like creating those contrasts and kind of expressing those kind of differences through their clothes?
It was a dream job, honestly, and the ability to uh, define a courtroom through your costumes is really a wonderful experience. It was very clear which side is the prosecution and which side is the defense. And the prosecution were, the very straight, boxy, dark suits, white shirts, skinny tie that you imagine of the 60s. It's what you imagine of the politicians, and you imagine of, NASA or whatever, any kind of the man. And then the attorneys, however, for the defense, are they more, academic, and they're more liberal, and consequently, they do not wear navy suits or charcoal gray suits or black suits. All of their suits are tweeds and browns and greens and softer fabrics and a little more rumpled, and just not a boxy dark suit like the other side. That was really a way to make them also connect with who they were defending.
Now, one of the things we see Abby Hoffman in, played by Sacha Baron Cohen in the film, is this famous American flag shirt, where we see a lot of photos of Abby Hoffman in that shirt.
Yes.
Like, was that something that you custom made for Sacha Baron Cohen, or were you able to source that, or like what went into recreating that one?
That's a good question, because honestly, of all of the costumes in that film, nothing took more effort than that shirt. And I don't mean it so much. Yes, we had to have the fabric made, and yes, it was custom made. But the debate about whether or not to use it and where to use it was pretty endless. And not endless, but it just was very, very thought out. It was one of the first things I addressed with to Aaron, partly because whenever Abbie Hoffman has been portrayed in other films, he's almost always put in that American flag shirt. Then when in the first Borat, Sacha Baron Cohen goes to a rodeo and he wears a rodeo shirt that's American flag. And the DP thought, oh no, they're going to think it's Borat, which was turned out to be like a non-reason. And ultimately, Abbie Hoffman wore it all the time. And he was arrested for desecration of the American flag because he wore it. Which, wearing a shirt made of that looks like the American flag just seems so tame today. I mean, it just it seemed really important to use it. Now, the choice to use it as his sort of performance shirt that you cut back and forth to all the time was Aaron's idea, and it was really appropriate. I thought that was almost like the perfect solution to that. It just tied the whole thing together, in my opinion. So, no, I will just say this about, and the costume designers, I'm sure Lou and Megan will know what this is like, but, we had to have the fabric made. And the first run of the fabric, there was a little bit of a bleed in the red, and then we had to have it done again, and then we had it made, and the placement wasn't quite right of the stars, and so then we had to have it made again and run more fabric. And this is what happens with some costumes. Some piece just ends up absorbing a lot of time and energy and thought that really just no one would ever know, but it just happens like that sometimes. So.
And in addition to establishing the characters, these specific characters, there are also like very large group scenes in the film. These rallies, and of course the clash between the protesters and the police on the Hill, the violence at night, which we see later in the film. Like how much effort and time and wardrobing goes into scenes with that many active participants and actors and background actors?
Honestly, it's uncalculable. It takes so much to pre-fit all those extras, to get everyone fit, get them dressed, get them out there at night. We had a pool of, I don't know how many extras, at maybe 500 or 600 extras, because not every one of them would show up every night. We couldn't, and the riots take place over several days. No one, it's not like we changed their clothes for different days. Everyone just had one costume and they just went out there. I will say that the Chicago extras, we filmed in Chicago, that riot scene, and the courtroom was filmed in New Jersey. But the people from Chicago, the extras from Chicago, and were so fantastic when they were really into it. I mean, we were really on their turf, literally. This was literally where it happened. And plenty of them had heard about it from their parents, and they understood what it was. And they were just so in the moment with it. It was really quite wonderful. And in a way, I feel that it doesn't always happen with a bunch of extras, where they just have this really deep-seated commitment, and it really shows. I mean, it really looks exciting, and they intercut actual footage during the riot scenes. 1968, real riot scenes footage is cut into our footage, and because it's black and white, you can kind of identify it, but there is a little footage that is color. That is from that era, and I actually thought, wow, that looks so good, and then I thought, oh no, that's not that's not our footage.
Well, I mean, the film is set in the like late 60s. It's relatively recent history. What are the challenges of trying to recreate looks that are from the relatively recent past? So things that are sort of recognizable to us, things that maybe are in thrift shops. Were you able to source more of it than a film that's set maybe farther back?
It's 50 years old. I mean, that it happened more than 50 years ago now. So that's pretty old by thrift store standards. The more recent past, I think is, if you're trying to do a 90s film, you can find that. But I find that really hard because it's such a recent past. It's sort of harder to identify in a way. And also, it just looks like old clothes. Whereas these are really old, like 50 years old is pretty old. But in the cycle of fashion and clothing, it's the cool guys still look cool. It really resonates somehow, and we still are recreating some of those looks. I mean, it was such a big moment in fashion history, and it's mostly men, and they really look good in these clothes. I don't know what it is. I find it very compelling, and it was, you would not be able to really source it in thrift stores. It was mostly through vintage clothing dealers and some rental houses in New York. I used and actually Chicago, when we were there, is a very good source. The Midwest is a very good source for sourcing clothing, and it also has the right look for this show, which just it needed to be. The people protesting were college students and suburban folk. They were not, edge of anything. They were really just concerned citizens, and it was important that it had a look like that. That it didn't look, too fun or too airy or too warm. It was sort of a corduroy and tweed and suits kind of show, honestly.
Yeah, I'm probably warped by the way time passes. I still feel like the 1990s were like last week. So, thank you very much for your time, and it was a pleasure talking with you.
Likewise.